So today we'll be going through the session on creating the right pitch, right? So let's look at what is the objective here. That is to enable the salesperson, you or your salesperson, to devise the right pitch that compels the prospect to be interested and give out a buying intent or be interested in your product or a service, right? So that being the objective. We'll be covering a few things like what exactly is a sales pitch, some of the sales myths, and what are the different steps that you need to follow to create the right sales pitch. And I'm also taking this opportunity to talk a little more about the benefits, means talking about your product and or a service benefit, right? So that will be the agenda for the session today. So before we do anything else, like we'll just go through a few sales myths, right? So the first one is that many people think the best sales reps are natural born sellers, right? So you also a common relevant myth is also like all extrovert people are good in sales, right? So which is not true, right? The best sales reps have a formula or a strategy or a process that is repeatable and scalable, right? Which also mean anybody can be a good salesperson if you have the right formula, if you have the right strategy, and if you have the right process, which is repeatable and scalable, right? So the second myth is that a good sales pitch should convey anything and everything about your product or your service and its features, right? Wrong. You should always be talking less about your features and more about the benefits, right? Always talk about what is in it for the customer than talking about what your product or your service is, right? Moving to the third one, using a sales script is impersonal, right? Which means people feel that if I'm using a scripted approach, it doesn't give a personalized feeling. So I know what I'm talking about. I know my product well, so I don't want to use a script. No, again, that's wrong. You should have a well-crafted script that you practice and follow. But of course, you need to know where you need to introduce or induce certain personalization elements, right? So the reason I put up this out here is to kind of like just break the barrier or a mindset that when you are going through the exercise of like making a good pitch, you should actually follow these busting of the myths, which is like you should have that formula or a process which is repeatable. That is like the way you're creating the script or this pitch. And your pitch should all be about benefits. And third, it should be a well-crafted script. It should be a standard process with certain elements where you can induce personalization, right? So having said this, I'll move to understanding what a sales pitch is, right? Sales pitch, I'm just reading out the typical description. A sales pitch is a salesperson's attempt to persuade their prospect or buy or believe in what they're offering, right? So it is all about you trying to convey and persuade your prospect, right, about your product or service, and you expect him to either get interested in it or buy your product, right? I'll want to relate this to like a typical, like where this word emerged from the pitch, right? So it is like about pitching to a batsman, right? So in this exercise, it is not just about like throwing the ball. You need the right reaction. That is, it is not all about like telling what your product, what the benefits are. It is about like persuading him, getting that reaction back, getting that buying intent, getting an interest in looking at it forward, right? That is the most important thing here. So our session today is going to concentrate on how you are going to pitch well and get a right reaction from the prospect side. And this entire pitching exercise becomes even more difficult when we are talking about remote sales, right? As we've been discussing over the last few sessions, there are a lot of handicaps when you're trying to sell remotely. There are issues like you're not able to see that person, you're not able to get his body language, you're not getting certain signals that you can see when you're sitting across the table. So the process that you follow in this entire pitching exercise should be pretty robust to overcome all those handicaps that you have during a remote sale process. So what does it take to create the right sales pitch, right? These are the different elements of the sales pitch. So I'm going to take each one of these in detail in the coming slides. So we have the icebreaker, the UFC or the elevator pitch, and then product, about the product and credibility, benefit statements, the collateral that you need to use, the validation that you need to impose, and then the next steps. So the first one, the introduction and icebreaker. So again, like when I'm talking about a pitch creation here, I'm looking at it from both perspectives. Like you are actually pitching to someone on the phone or through a video call, right? Where you're either doing it cold or you're doing it with an appointment where he is warm towards receiving you, or you are sending this entire thing over an email, right? In all the three different situations, you can use all these successive steps, right? So introduction and icebreaker is more to do with like when you're on the phone, right? When you're talking to him, when you're trying to pitch. So you need to perform a great introduction, right? That is, since again, like in the remote sales, you don't have the luxury of like seeing him and he doesn't see you, right? So your voice, your tonality, your enthusiasm levels, everything should be great. So perform a great introduction, tell who you are and why you're calling. And in this process, you need to be different. You need to beat the monotony, right? So I have two different anecdotes or situations here. So generally, like when you, especially in the cold calling scenario, right? When you're calling someone, when he picks up the phone, he's not expecting your call, and then you introduce yourself and you want a conversation with him, right? So generally, most of the people, what do? Like, hey, good morning, so and so. My name is so and so. I'm calling from this company. Can I talk to you now? Is it a good time? Do you have a couple of minutes? Right? These are the typical way a person introduces himself, right? And second thing, the monotony factor, right? You get so many calls. Almost every one of us like get calls from either credit card companies or home loans or personal loans. The moment you pick up the call, they say, good morning, my name is so and so, I'm calling from so and so bank. The moment you hear that, right, you are put off, right? Unless you need some of those services, right? When you don't need that, you immediately know someone calling from so and so bank means they're trying to sell you either a card or a loan or whatever, right? So that itself sets your mind off in terms of a receptivity for the person. So it's very, very important to break this monotony, right? So there are a few different things you can try, right? So instead of like starting with my name is so and so, I'm calling from ICICI Bank, you can try a different introduction, right? And to talk about like, is it a good time? Usually like people have a tendency to say no, right? Or to say opposite of like what you say. So you call someone and saying like, can I talk to you? No. Do you have some time now? No. Like, is it a good time now? No. So can we reverse that, right? Did I catch you at a bad time? No. Wow, that's good for you, right? So these are certain minute things that you can try to sound different in the first level of conversation that you're in, right? So instead of like, I mean, assume that person who's called you, instead of he saying, hello, I'm Aditya calling from ICICI Bank. Instead, if he says, good morning, sir, this is Aditya, and I am a financial expert. I've been associated with ICICI Bank. There's some difference, right? The introduction sounds a little different, and it is like the subconscious behavior of the buyer which gets displaced there, and he wants to listen to you further, right? So there's no prescribed formula of like how to introduce yourself differently, but think of it like in your context of in your business, in your industry, see how else you can actually figure out like the way of introducing and like getting your first line of conversation there, right? And successively you can use certain icebreakers to open a conversation, to open that, building that rapport. Icebreakers are used to build rapport with that the person, the prospect, right? Use icebreakers. Icebreakers are typically, like for those of you who don't know, these are like certain small talks or small conversations which are not even related, may or may not be related to your business, which kind of sets the ease between the two of you, and then you continue with your business conversations. So even the current situation, like the corona scene today, this thing, it could be a great icebreaker. You can start with something like that. In a physical meeting, most of the times people use traffic as an icebreaker. So either they would have reached there late or on time, or late or early. They open the conversation with like, oh, the traffic was great today, I could reach early, or very bad traffic, I got late, and it goes on like, Bangalore traffic and all that. So that's an icebreaker, and that starts a conversation. It puts you in ease. So that way, think of different icebreakers that you can use, and also your preparation with the sales, the prospect's profile can also help you in identifying certain icebreakers. Say, for example, in his Facebook, like he's been following a lot of cricket or posting a lot of cricket related activities, and if there is some cricket event going on, you can start with that, like, hey, did you watch the match yesterday? Or you can say like, I just woke up late today, I was watching the match yesterday, did you too watch? Something like that. So that is of interest to him. He will have something to say about it, right? So that was an example. So introduction icebreaker is very, very relevant and important, because this sets the pace for your next steps of conversation, right? And then, obviously, all of you would have experienced that the moment you introduce, if you have done cold calls, especially, or even if it is a warm call and you're trying to follow up on a person, right? You would have experienced this many times. Like we also saw this in the objection handling session, that the moment you say, I'm so-and-so calling from this company and I just need 2 minutes of your time. Can we talk now? What is it related? This is about this product or this service, or this is about this proposal that I sent to you, whatever be it, right? The moment you say it, you get an objection saying, oh no, I don't have time right now. You can call me later or send me an email, whatever, right? So this upfront contract as a process will help you avoid this situation in most of the times. In spite of this, in some instances, the prospect may genuinely be busy and like he doesn't want to have a conversation now, at which point of time you can schedule another one later. But most of the times, if it is a brush off kind of an objection, the upfront contract really gives you a lot of value in terms of buying the time from the prospect, right? So a well executed upfront contract buys you time. It sets a clear agenda and it defines the possible outcomes, right? And more importantly, it puts the prospect at ease and seemingly in command. I say seemingly because he's not actually in command, but he gets a feeling that he is in command of the conversation, right? So we discussed this in the last session, the objection handling session, but I'm just taking you through one example again. So a typical upfront contract is that like I'm putting this in the Indian context. So I'm saying, sir, I just need 2 minutes of your time to discuss how our financial services can provide you with the right directions towards profitability. If you're still interested after 2 minutes, if you're still not interested after 2 minutes, I'll hang up the call. Fair enough, right? So what you've actually set the agenda that you're going to discuss about how your services can help him give right directions towards profitability. You've also induced a benefit statement here, right? And you've told him like you need 2 minutes, right? And the outcome you've said like after 2 minutes, if you're still not interested, we'll end the call, right? So you're giving him the command in terms of deciding whether to end the call or not, right? So that as in a subconscious behavior, he gets that ease of, he gets into a comfort zone. Yes, now I can control this, right? And then he accepts. So most of the time you get to have the 2 minutes and even beyond for that matter. Okay, we'll move to the next piece of the pitch, which is talking about your product and service, product or the service, and building a credibility around it, right? So this is the flow of your entire pitch, right? You introduce yourself, you've bought time for yourself, and now you're going to give a quick thing about your product and service and with certain credibility elements. So this also could be like a together could be like a elevator pitch for you, a very, very short introduction. So this thing should be like very, very interesting, sounding very interesting to the prospect. Don't use like a lot of tech stuff or jargons. Put it in like very, very plain business language, a language that your prospect understands and appreciates. And you need to add credibility, right? That is your company's journey or history, your company's mission, vision, your team strength, the total experience that your people carry, the customers that you have, and your personal strengths. If you're more of like if you're a law firm or if you're accounting firm where you as a person your strengths and your profile is going to kind of like sell your service. You can add some of your personal strengths in this short elevator pitch kind. So I'm just giving you a small example here. So if I'm reading this out, like I'm saying, we are a 15-year-old audit firm. We have worked with over 1,000 companies, helping them manage their day-to-day accounting, audit, and regulatory needs. We work closely with our clients to ensure timely processing of returns, payrolls, and regulatory reports. Beyond regulatory work, our 20-member team with over 100 years of cumulative experience understand our clients well and provide the right directions on being profitable at all times. Many of our clients, like so and so, have outsourced their complete financial process to us. Right? So this is a crude, maybe I don't understand this well, but I just put this together. This is a crude example of like how an elevator pitch can be, right? So what we have done here, we have added certain credibility elements about the company, right? That you're a 15-year-old firm and you work with over 1,000 customers, right? So that's your company credibility. And then we have told what is your product or a service. So here in this case, the service is the accounting, audit, and regulatory service. And certain advantage elements or strength elements, timely processing, right, of different things. We have included that also. And then the team strength, like you're also saying you have a 20-member team and they have a over of 100 years of cumulative experience. And we have also talked about the benefit again, like in terms of like what do you do with your clients? You give them the right directions to be profitable, right? And you've also put customer references, right? You've named a couple of your big customers, and that gives a complete elevator pitch here. So this elevator pitch will take about like 20 to 25 seconds to deliver. And this is a good one in terms of like the timing, right? And it also involves all these credibility elements and some couple of good benefit statements, right? So you should think of an elevator pitch for your product or a service, right? You should write down an elevator pitch. So ideally, like you or your employees, anyone asks you, right? Say you are meeting a friend after some 10 years. When he asks you like, what do you do, right? You need to tell what your company is all about, right? So that is a sort of elevator pitch, right? So come up with if you don't already have one, if you don't already have an elevator pitch for your product or a service or your company, come up with one. Write down, like ensure that you are including all these credibility aspects, and which also depicts what exactly you do, the benefits, the company strengths, your personal strengths, your team strength, everything, right? Prepare one good elevator pitch, and it's not a bad idea. Like even large companies like Oracle, Microsoft, like they all have elevator pitches, and it is a standard one across the company. Every sales guy, even if you wake them up in their sleep, what is Oracle? They'll give this elevator pitch, right? It is so highly internalized, right? So if you don't already have one, or if you have not internalized it with all your salespeople or your key staff, do it today. Okay. The next step, right? This is very, very important. I'm going through a little detail about benefits, right? So adding benefit statements is an integral piece of your entire pitch, right? As I said, like the idea of pitching is to get a reaction from the prospect, and the customers or your prospects, they don't buy your product. They buy the outcome of your product, right? Which is the benefits. So you should tell more about benefits. You should talk more about benefits and less about your product. Right? And most of the times what happens when you're talking more about your product, right? They start assuming or they start perceiving what will the benefits be, right? And many times they might go wrong, right? So it is your duty to tell them what are the benefits than letting them perceive or assume, right? So I have a small depiction here. All of you know Popeye, the cartoon character. So he is your customer, right? And your product is spinach, right? So if you want to sell spinach to Popeye, you don't have to tell anything about spinach. All you need to tell him is that spinach gives you strength and vitality and you can go save olive oil, right? So that is what Popeye wants to know, and that is how you should tell him, right? So it's a quick depiction. And moving on, see, the other important aspect is like when we are trying to talk about benefits of our products or service, right? Many of us will have like doubts in terms of like how to frame a benefit statement, right? What actually is a benefit? So for that, like we will go through this part of like understanding a feature, function, advantage, and a benefit, right? So you have your product or your service. There are multiple elements to that product or a service, right? So if it is a software product, then it has like there could be a UI part, there could be the core element of the software, there could be a AI algorithm. So there are different elements or different features of that product. Likewise, for a service, there are different things like you might be actually doing a full service and like part services, modules, different modules that you might be offering as a service. So all these different functionalities and features of your product or service will always have a specific advantage and a benefit, right? So what is a feature, right? Feature is something that depicts what it is, right? Whereas a function depicts what it does, what the feature does. That is a functionality. And advantage is how it is better, either for the user or for the in comparison with something else or in comparison with doing nothing. Right? And the benefit is the actual result, right? And the benefit is always about what is in it for the customer, right? The business benefit, the end result as to what we saw in the earlier depiction. After having spinach, he gets the strength and virility, right? So that is the benefit, right? What is in it for him is the most important thing that he looks for than trying to look at what your product is and what your feature or a function is, right? So here in this picture, can you spot the difference? So we have Diet Coke here and low calorie. This is what is being advertised everywhere, right? Fair. We are just looking at it from a different perspective here. Low calorie, zero calorie or low calorie Coke, right? So when someone tells you, okay, buy this 0 calorie Coke, right? They're talking about a feature of that product, right? But what is the benefit of it, right? For someone who doesn't understand, the actual benefit is like you gain less weight by having this, right? Or as what it is depicted in this picture, you can look better than Carol from the accounting department at the Christmas party, right? So that is the benefit that you want to convey, right? Because Coke is something we all know, and low calorie we have heard enough so that like we know the benefit of it. But in your product or in your service, people might not be aware of the benefits. So it is very, very important to call out the benefits and talk less about the features and functionalities, or even the advantages for that matter, right? So to give you a much deeper understanding as to how you do this, I have this slide, right? It is text heavy, but let us go through it one by one, right? So what is the business? Like the first business that we're going to talk about is a BI software, business intelligence software, or a reporting software, right? The feature or function that we are talking about here is a AI algorithm, artificial intelligence algorithm that the software is using. So as a salesperson, you go tell your prospect that, hey, I have a great AI algorithm. It does this, it does that, it picks up all these trends and it picks up things and it puts in your report. You are still talking about feature or a function, right? The advantage is a user experience that is adapted to your needs, right? So this is how it is better, right? By using an AI algorithm, your user experience is going to be much better because the AI picks up all the relevant things that you want to look at and then puts it in your report, right? That is still an advantage, right? What is the benefit for this? Access the data the moment you need it, thereby saving time and increasing productivity, right? This becomes an advantage. So anything that talks about like what it does to the customer. In this case, we are talking about saving time, increasing productivity, right? This is what is the advantage. Sorry, the benefit, right? So this is what you're going to talk about. So in your benefit statement, it should say the AI algorithm gives you a better user experience and gets you the access to the data the moment you need it, thereby saving your time and increasing productivity. Right? That completes the benefit statement. And if you're not doing the benefit part of it, you're missing it out. So I'm just spending more time on the first one so that I get you the structure, the intent of this entire slide. So if you just tell him about AI algorithm and the advantage, he might imply a different type of a benefit, right? When you talk about a user experience that is adapted to your needs, he might think about something else. Even whatever you're trying to convey in terms of like saving time or increasing productivity will not hit him. He can't assume that. So you have to call it out and tell him very clearly, right? The second example here, a real estate business. The feature is the business has over 20 years experience selling houses in that particular neighborhood, right? What is the advantage out of this feature? There is a expert knowledge of the neighborhood and what sells well and what not. That is an advantage. But okay, this is a feature and an advantage that the real estate company carries. But what is in it for the buyer, right? What is in it for the client of that company? So the advantage, the benefit is the client can sell his house quickly for the highest amount possible by tapping into our proven strategy that sell homes in your area. I hope you're getting the gist of this, right? So you can go through the rest of the, or I can quickly take you through in terms of digital marketing, expert in social media management. The advantage becomes like proven techniques, and the benefit is like the business will grow on autopilot with we managing your social media. And then hosting platform business handles multiple core structures of data. This is like a pure technical feature, right? Advantage can meet high volume demands. Benefit, your site won't go down when your latest product offering goes viral, right? So this is a complete off the line benefit statement, right? It doesn't have any direct relation to the feature or the advantage listed here, but this is what it is meant for, right? So if you talk about like handling multiple core structures of data, meeting high volume demands, a business user may not understand or may not assume what does it actually mean. So you have to be granular and tell them the exact benefit that he gets. So the idea is like you should take up your product or service, write down all the different features of that product, right? And then write down what are the different advantages that each of these feature carries, and try and write a benefit statement related to that feature and an advantage, right? So for your exercise, you may list down as many as like say 10 or even more number of features of your product or a service, right? And start writing for each feature, one advantage, one benefit, one or more, right? Like that, you have to complete all your features, their advantages and benefits. Then you will be able to write the benefit statements, right? Which includes part of your features, advantages, and then the benefits. I hope you understand this. If you have any questions or if you need any help, you can always get in touch with me or Anup on this. So we'll move on to the next one, which is the collateral. This is the next step of your pitch creation process, where you use different collaterals, different documents, or different write-ups that help you augment your pitch, right? First is the customer references, right? So even when you're when you're pitching over phone or when you're pitching over a video call or anything, you can still put up one slide or you can talk about your key customers and one line about like what key difference that did it bring about to them, right? In terms of the benefit that you delivered to them. So ideally in your pitch, you should talk about your big customers and certain customers who are relevant to your prospect in the same industry line of your prospect. So even if they're small, it's okay, but you should have certain relevant names. So if you're talking to an insurance industry and you're talking about all bank names, the insurance prospect will not appreciate it. So you talk about like one big software company, one big bank, and then you talk about 2-3 smaller, even if smaller, the insurance companies that you've serviced, so that he is able to relate. Okay, oh, he will know most of the insurance companies, so he will relate, right? That is a customer references. Second is use cases. Again, like we have discussed this in the earlier sessions. So it is use cases, a generic write-up of your different products, features, right? or benefit statements rather, right? Whatever, to be rather precise, whatever you put in that exercise of listing down all the features and putting their advantages and benefits and creating benefit statements out of it, they can actually be use cases, right? So, but use cases are a little more detailed in terms of for this problem area, this is the feature that is applied, and this is the result or the benefit that the feature brings to that problem, right? Case studies are a little larger use cases, but specific to a customer. So again, you take up a customer example. First, you tell them what is the customer all about, right? A quick 2 lines about what the customer, what his business is. And then you tell what is the problem they were facing, right? They had this kind of a issue in their whatever they had some latency in their like processes, this that they didn't have enough resources, they didn't have enough productivity to the extent whatever. State the problem and identify as to what you implemented, like you implemented your service and a particular feature or a set of features that address the problem, right? So you have a customer, you have a problem, and you were telling what you implemented. And the final thing is, after you implemented your product or after you delivered your service, what was the benefit, how that problem was addressed, and how what is the impact of that solution, right? So this entire thing with some pictures, a customer logo, everything, put it in one page, that becomes a case study, right? So you have to use relevant customer references, relevant use cases, and relevant case studies in your pitch, in your pitching exercise, right? Even if you are pitching over the phone, you can still give like, okay, let me take 1 minute to explain how we solved a problem at this customer, right? And then you can explain that case study to him. Okay. The last item, sorry, the last but one item is the validation, right? So the idea here is to validate what your customer has perceived about your product, right? As how it can benefit him, right? As I said, sometimes like the customer perceptions differ than what you exactly want to convey. So you say something, he perceives something else, right? And it's our duty, as I said earlier, it's our duty to put it in the best possible way so that his perception is in line with what you want to convey. But still, it's good to validate, right? So what you need to do either at the end of your pitch or even during a pitch, like after you say, after you mentioned the benefit statement or after you have taken him through a case study, right? You can ask certain validation questions, right? So the examples are like there are a couple of generic questions that you can ask, and there are type of specific questions that you can ask to validate. Example of a generic question is at the end of your pitch. So what do you think of a product or service? Right? So open-ended, very broad question. Or if you want to narrow it down a little, what do you think you'll be able to? Would you be able to reduce your costs by employing our services? Right. This is a more close-ended question, still generic in nature. A specific question could look like this. How much time would you save if you had access to all your business report on a single click? Or what do you like about the marketing automation function of our product? Do you have any feedback? Right. So these are the type of questions that you should ask at the end of your pitch, right? So that you know you have driven home the point and you have conveyed and you have created the right perception about your product in the prospect's mind. And the last step is next steps, right? So after you have completed your pitch, there are a few things. The moment you end your pitch, you should specify a call to action on the next step, right? So what should be the next step? Next step need not be necessarily like a closure, right? After you're pitched, most of the times it is the customer is interested. He wants to look at a detailed demo, or he wants to actually go through your service elements. He wants to have a detailed presentation about the different service elements that he wants to have a clarification on a few other things. So you need to set up a time, a separate discussion for that. So the next step could be a positive progression towards closure, not necessarily the closure, right? So, but whatever be it, you have to specify what is the next step, right? And what the customer has to do to the next step to reach that next step, right? Call out the timelines. So when, right? So assuming after your first pitch, he seems to be interested and he wants to have a detailed discussion about certain services that you offer, right? So you have to, the call to action is you have to set up a meeting, right, to discuss the detailed elements. When, you have to be clear as to when, right? And you have to granulate it to the minute, hour, day, date, month, year, right? So to that extent, you need to be very precise in the timeline, right? So assuming the situation, okay, you've done your pitch on your services and he says, yeah, this looks good, but I want to understand more about how you do the regulatory stuff and what kind of directions would you be providing us. Great. We can actually set up a different discussion for that when you have time. Now we have run out of time. The next discussion, can we schedule it sometime? I need about 30 minutes of your time. Can we schedule it sometime next week? Fair enough. Next week is good. So when next week, like, can we do it sometime on a Wednesday when it is like not too heavy for you? Fine, Wednesday. Wednesday, how about like 11 a.m.? Does it sound good to you? Yeah, good. So what you have done is, like, in terms of the next step, you've said we'll have a detailed discussion about those two elements and we'll have it on a call, and you've identified like which day, which hour, which minute, and then you say, okay, great, I will send you an invite. Please accept the invite, and I look forward to talking to you on Wednesday, right? So that's how you should address the clear next step. It sounds very professional, and it also helps in terms of inducing the seriousness, right? If he says next week and you say, great, I'll call you next week, and you put the phone down or you end the meeting there, it doesn't sound professional, and he's also not serious about it. He'll think next week, theek hai, dekh lenge. Right? So being so granular sounds professional, induces a lot of seriousness. And your post call or meeting, like after you've made this pitch or after you've sent the pitch email, you have to send a if it is a call where you've discussed a lot of things, you have to send a gist of like what you've discussed, right? It's like either an MOM if it is going to be formal, or it could just be like a simple email stating, hey, it was good talking to you. We discussed on so and so things, and finally you told me like, yeah, this is interesting, and we can set up a demo next week. So I'm going ahead and setting it up on 11 a.m. on Wednesday. I'm sending you this invite, right? So that gist or the summary of what you've discussed should reach him, and you can attach or you can mention about like any other things. If in case if he is asked about like, okay, what did you do for that customer? Even you wouldn't have had this at that point of time. You would have told him, I'll send it to you later, right? You could actually, you should send it, or even when you actually went through the case study with him on the call, if you have a case study as a document, you can attach it in the email, right? So you can mention during the call, I mentioned about like what we did for this company. I'm attaching a quick write-up on that, like have a look at it when you have time, right? That way. And follow up diligently, right? If he says like, call me next week, call me next Wednesday morning, call him next Wednesday morning, right? Or remind him on the Tuesday evening and then call him next Wednesday morning. So the follow up, like It could be a simple next level follow-up, or even if he says, okay, I will have to, you may have to talk to my colleague and he will kind of set up the time, right? If that is the case, talk to his colleague, set up the time, and then update it back to this person, right? It is also very important. So these are the different things about like the last stage, which is setting up the clear next step and doing the right follow. Right? So that pretty much ends our session today. So what we discussed about was like you have to create your entire sales pitch, which includes how you introduce yourself, how you buy time from your prospect, how you put out the quick introduction about your product, service, and credibility, which is the elevator pitch. How you talk about how do you induce benefit statements, and how you validate, how you end the call with the clear next steps, everything. Put everything, make a script out of it, keep reviewing it, practice it, and then go pitch. That's pretty much it. Wishing you all the best for creating and using a good sales pitch. Thank you, guys.